Call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of our, what is it, Synergy 2 project, also called other things. So go around the room and identify ourselves for the record. Eric, we'll start with you, sir.
Eric Croft.
Felix Avea.
Dick Trenny.
Tim Steele.
Pete Peterson.
Mike Chadwick is still on it.
Lee Burton, Seco Consulting.
Okay. Zig,
Okay.
time's yours.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about my last report. So I guess the first thing we want to talk about is trying to get past all the potholes that we are experiencing, and there's no question we are experiencing potholes. So in terms of preparing for your first official financials from the new system, you need to get all the data loaded and migrated and converted and so forth, and that's been the last task.
Zig, let me interrupt you for a
project
second.
team.
We've been added with Suzanne LaFrancis here. Go on, Zig, thank you.
So that's the last task that the project team is undertaking. Master data was successfully loaded several weeks ago. Transaction data has been going on the last few weeks, and they're tracking it at 99.99% accuracy, which is excellent. There are a few activities that are still going on today, or this week. I think, are they finalized now?
We're in period 9.
Period 9. Okay, so they've been basically closing the books for every period of the year for 2017 is what they've been doing this week. And so period 9, of course, is September, which means that early next week we'll start being able to do the closing activities. And the target, I think, for the closing activity for October is sometime in mid-November. I think we need to highlight the fact that this is probably the last activity that, at least with regard to the project, that Alden is responsible for and that he's been working on. So that
We notice he's absent. There he is, way back in the corner.
So in essence, there's still some transition activities going on between the project team and the support organization, the support team. There were, as you recall, 29 reports that were deferred out of the scope of the project activity. 10 of those are finished, but the remaining 19 are still being done by the support team. Well, that includes the 10 CAFA reports, so they're still moving forward trying to finish those. The data team, which is the team that did all the cutover and all that kind of thing, the team that was responsible for cleaning up the grants issues that we had for about 4 months in terms of accuracy of data. That team is in essence gone today or tomorrow, give or take, whichever day is appropriate. And then I think it's necessary, we need to recognize that there's been no request for knowledge transfer of the data team leader. And the concern I have there is all the issues that they had to go through to clean up grants, which will come back to haunt us again and again and again. So what's going on? Clearly, everybody is aware that there are some issues with regard to paychecks, payroll, timekeeping, and so on. And we need to recognize that that's put a tremendous load on the payroll department. And again, I speak anecdotally. You know, I've been told, if you will, hearsay that a lot of the folks in payroll are putting in 80 hours a week. So they're doing their level best, but they're just buried. Clearly, they're buried. Employees are getting blindsided. We talked for the last 2 months. We talked about getting information out to them, getting the known differences out to them, managing expectations. Well, they're still getting surprised. They're still getting surprised by the fact that you don't understand what's happening to their paycheck, why are things not there, and so forth. The timing of deductions, all that kind of stuff is going on. So there continues to be a general lack of understanding regarding all that throughout. Role mapping is basically starting to change on the fly. Role mapping is what defines the security, defines who gets access, it defines who is required to review and approve. A lot of issues with review and approve on time cards. Okay? Part of the problem on the time card approval is also this confusion and lack of understanding with regard to who's the backup. Who's the backup to review time cards? Okay? My understanding, and I checked on this, is it's there. In other words, I was told that the role mapping does identify the backups. The problem is it's a surprise to some people. as to who that backup is, and that's in the role mapping. Which takes us down the path of, well, then there's changes being made to the role mapping, confusion, those kinds of things happening on the fly. We were told, and I think it actually came out with an email from the city manager, that quite a few management people didn't even attend the MSS training, which is the management self-service training, which is where approvals of time cards takes place. So, but apparently there's, they've reacted, people have been informed, hey, got to do this, got to get that training. Next slide.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Wilton joined us.
I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I don't know. Quick question. The city manager, where's Robert Harris?
I know that he's out of state.
Who do we have here to represent his, what he does as a focal
It's
point
his responsibility.
for SAP?
From the IT perspective.
But that's not the whole perspective, that's just the IT. So we don't have anybody here representing Robert?
We are here representing payroll and time.
Okay. Thank you.
That's good.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Wilton joined us. Sorry, Zig, go ahead.
Okay. Have an example of a time card. This is just an example to show that there are an awful lot of manual changes and adjustments that are going on. People are having difficulties with getting their time in, getting it in, and then all of a sudden they find themselves making these kind of adjustments by hand. You can understand that that's creating some issues. Next. I walked by the payroll department, I saw this sign on their door. Okay, they are overloaded. And I guess they lost a person last week, right?
Yes, we had one more out.
Okay, so they got a person actually leaving because of all the pressure on them. Okay, and they were probably already a little short-staffed to begin with, as I understand it. So that's what they've had to resort to. Got to talk to us, set up a time, because we really are having trouble because people are obviously just calling them all the time, walking in, screaming, hollering, yelling, whatever the case may be. I don't have facts with regard to that, but that certainly is an indicator.
That's for the person's time.
Question from assembly members. Go ahead, Zig, sorry.
So, generally there's a resource shortfall. A resource shortfall. We've gone into this transition, everybody backed off. They said, oh, we're done. Okay, well, we're not done. Okay, and everybody's starting to see that and starting to feel that now. It's been 3 weeks since 10/2, and the consultants themselves, we have some SAP and Peloton consultants that were still on site. Their last day is Friday, tomorrow. They'll still be working remotely, but they won't be here. I think that's a mistake. But they consider themselves being underutilized. They don't think that they're getting enough calls and requests for help, because they are now on a basically, we do what you ask us to do mode. That's their role. They're not taking any responsibility for the work.
Zig, let me interrupt you, Suzanne.
So why are they not being called? I mean, who would they be expecting to get the calls from users directly or from?
From the support team.
Okay.
From the support team, whether it be payroll or whether it be IT. I mean, as an example, somebody's got to sit there and say, here's a defect, here's a problem, we got to fix it, you fix it. Okay? And I'm just simply saying that's their view, that they think they're being underutilized. All right? In other words, if you need 12 hours of their time on a given day, you got to be willing to pay for it, but the point is you could get it. All right? Many consultants are ready to leave. They have no interest in coming back. They don't want to come here in the winter. They are tired. They've been here for 2 years. Just be able to realize that's the dynamic we're faced with.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do we need to send out a list of who's available to be called as a consultant if you have questions, the call a friend list or whatever?
I think most people know. I think you'll see this later. We're going to talk about, well, do we really have direct control and guidance on this whole activity? And we really didn't for those first 3 weeks. There was an awful lot of committee assigning of things as opposed to one individual. You had that with Alden. Okay, you had direct line, get this done. Got very fuzzy for those first 3 weeks. Now, reaction is there, it's been done, it's been changed. There is now somebody managing the defect resolution. Okay?
Great, thank you.
And he's making the hard calls, which is what he should do. So as we need to recognize the SAP and Peloton consultants are contracted. We do have the funding, it's there, we can use them. Just got to use them, okay? AMS utilization, that's the services contract that's been in place since, I think, round numbers, April of this year. Okay, and it runs on an annual basis, and I think it's a 3-year contract. And it basically provides right at 1,350 hours monthly are available. I was shocked when I got this information from their administrator that said you've only used 300 to date in October, and that was 3 days ago. Well, clearly if you're hurting for resources, it would make sense to use the resources. Okay? My understanding is that the project team had identified for a payroll expert, an SAP consultant, granted $309 an hour. Person hasn't been brought on board for 3 weeks. I don't get it. I mean, if you've got payroll issues and you want to work the issues, does it cost you money? Yes. $309 an hour.
Zig, let me interrupt you. Payroll's here. Why haven't we used this expert?
I'm assuming this might be my additional resource we received for working on telestaff and teledraver interfaces. I'm not exactly sure when we were given the word that he was officially available, but we've been having him look into the telestaff and teledriver issues we're having, along with specialized reporting that we've determined we need, that the standard reports are not functioning as we were told they would be. So I'm not exactly sure who this resource is, if that's Ron Shield or if it's someone else.
You have a name, Alden?
I believe Ron, I know the first name is Ron, I believe, and he was available to be used, I think, beginning of October 2nd. So the question would be, when did you start using him? And I think that probably goes to your point that he may have been available to work a lot earlier than what was actually assigned.
I'm just saying, those are examples.
Thank you to payroll. Zig, go ahead.
I'm sorry? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Zig.
Just a reminder that all the SAP leadership, the last one is Dennis Shield. He's done on Friday. Okay? And he actually has been putting in his time, I believe, at no charge. Is that a fair statement?
That is actually inaccurate. Dennis has been charged the project for the month of October.
Oh, for the month of October. Casey was free?
SAP.
Okay. But the point is, those two are gone. All right? So you don't get the value of their input. And then, by the way, Dennis told me he was going to be on vacation for the next 2 months. ITD continues to struggle with hiring SAP functional skills. Okay? So far, to the best of my knowledge, only one individual in the ITD department has SAP functional skills. Got technical, they've taken care of the technical piece, but not functional. Okay, next page. So defects, all right? So we're worried about defects as we should. You can see that they climbed and they continue to climb. So the total number of defects is right around 200. The good news, as of this morning's daily report, and so this is the current report. The good news is it actually dropped off a little bit over there. Not as many defects have hit. That's good. Concerning is the fact that the red is critical. You can see critical is not necessarily grown. It's been somewhat steady. Okay? In terms of defects that are considered to be critical priority. The high ones is the yellow category, and as you can see, the yellow category tends to be growing. That's concerning. And critical and high are the two that are going to have the most effect, the most impact on the situation. Good news, as I've said, the good news is, yes, we finally got away from this whole committee thing with regard to managing defects, and we've got one individual targeted to do that, and that individual seems to be grabbing it pretty well. Making a lot of phone calls and saying, where is it, where is it, where is it? Next page. This is the chart from the 1018 report. I'm showing it to you only because it's different from the report this morning. But it is basically showing the different colors of the priorities, and the blue peaks here, the little mountain ranges, are what's been cleaned up, cleared, solved. The problem here is as of 1018, you can see the peak was that we're getting 20 new defects a day, and we're only resolving 10. That's not a trend that we can sustain at all. Clearly, we can't. Okay? Next page. So today's report, notice that we've only got 2 categories on here now, so the low and medium priority categories are not being looked at least in terms of formally reporting them. Hopefully they are still being tracked. Okay? So you've got the critical and you've got the highs. The good news, okay, is we've only got, yesterday we got 3 new critical and we closed off 10. That's the right trend. I think that's a direct effect of having one individual driving this thing. Okay? Not so good news is that trend is not happening with the highs. And what's going to happen here is we're going to keep focusing on those criticals, and those highs are going to start sneaking up on us. Okay, so I just want to remind us, this is on a page from a couple of earlier reports. I think I presented it to you at least twice. Back in June, when they were parallel, they reported known differences from the parallel payroll runs, known differences. And they reported those, and they said, be aware, this is what's going on, this is what's going to be different. You got to tell people. Don't think we've done a very good job at telling people. And that's all about managing expectations. So this is just a reminder that whatever known differences we've got out there, we got to get that information out to people. Okay? Let's go on. Okay, so there's a huge risk, I think, that the community's facing right now. Huge risk. You know, how long are people going to put up with getting underpayment on their checks? You know, and I just heard anecdotally that there are some individuals that literally are behind $8,000. Is that about right? Two paychecks? Is that the effect of 2 paychecks? That's pretty serious stuff. At what point do you think they're going to sit there and go to the paper? Okay, need to fix that. We got to be careful. Big risk. You know, what's going to happen is, you know, people are going to start overreacting, right? They're going to start saying, we got to fix this, we got to fix this, and when they're going to do that, they're going to start all of a sudden cutting corners, right? Let's just rubber stamp everything, or let's just pay everybody this and be done with it. You got to be careful. That can get you into deep trouble. Overpayments, certainly, you know, the odds are, I'm sure that individual who is complaining about 2 checks, I'm short 8,000, he will complain. Do you think the person who got an extra 8,000 is going to complain? Yes. I don't. Well, good for them. Okay, but it's possible that they don't, and if they don't, I'm saying that's a risk, right? That's a big risk. Payroll has updates. Payroll systems have updates every year in, because the IRS and the federal government changes things. Every year they do it. Every payroll system has updates related to W-2s, year-end tax reporting. Every one. It's not unique to SAP. Well, but remember, we've got a complex 30,000 table system here. And when they do updates, it's not inconsequential. It's not. So here we are worrying about, got to fix the paychecks, got to fix the paychecks. And meanwhile, if you're not careful, when you hit December and all of a sudden somebody says, got to get those updates in, it's too late. All of a sudden you're going to find yourself, well, we'll get the updates in at the end of first quarter. now people are saying, wait a minute, I gotta refile my taxes. You with me? It's gotta get going now. Now. Focus on time and pay defects may lead to overlooking vendor payments. You're into the time frame when you're all of a sudden, net 30, you're going to be into making vendor payments. All I can tell you is I didn't get mine. Now, am I going to complain and go to the paper? No. I'm just an example. But if you got some big outfit out there that's got owed $1 million and they don't get paid, so you got to realize that this is still sitting out there, okay? Because you can't got to fix the paychecks, let that happen. Then, and I've talked to you about this before, whatever you do, the big risk here is, let's fix this. I guarantee you, ITD, technical people will say, oh, I want to do service. I want to solve things for my customer. And boy, you sure don't want them to go into that production system and make changes. You got to fight that one off. Okay? So let's talk about planning for the year-end updates. There's, to my knowledge, and again, it's entirely possible some of this stuff's happening, but to my knowledge, there's no indication that ITD is actually planning for those year-end updates right now. Right now. I don't know that. Okay? What I do know is that SAP has given ITD a preliminary plan. Hopefully they're going to take advantage of that. Okay? But boy, this is an example, man. If we keep fighting alligators, we need to make sure we drain the swamp, and getting those updates in is part of draining the swamp. Let's look at their plan. So this is the SAP plan. Now, was it self-serving? Did it talk about SAP project management? Of course it was. No argument there. But the fundamental stuff that's up here, other than, okay, let's have SAP best practices, they want you to do that, okay. But the fundamental stuff that's in here has to be done. And again, we're talking about a complex 30,000 table system here. Okay, so you got to go through all this. Here's some preliminary times and dates and all that, but you can see it takes about 3 months. And we're already at the end of October, and none of this has been done, to my knowledge. So that immediately says, if I'm going to try to get everything done sometime in January, and I compress the time, what has to happen? Resources go up. Okay?
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Today. IT's here. Are you guys working on this year-end update to the table?
Yes, we are.
You are? Okay.
Good to hear.
Thank you. I just wanted to know before we get too far down the pike.
Good to hear.
Thank you. Go ahead, Zig.
However, they need to tell you about it. Okay? They need to tell you about it. It's a big deal. Okay, so some immediate remedial actions. Seriously consider going to exception payroll.
Means you assume everybody's there, and if they're not, then you change the timesheets to reflect that. The military does that for civil service employees. We assume they're there. And then there's a problem. The supervisor takes care, reduces the amount of pay on their timesheet. But we assume people are basically honest. Versus the time system we've got now, it requires our employees to check in for lunch, check out from lunch. It is just so time consuming. It's a real problem for them. Go ahead.
I mean, my understanding, we have thousands of employees, and most of them, I guess, got paid well, but they're ones at MLP in particular are very complicated because of the different rules on their pay. So we went from a couple dozen the first payroll to less than a dozen. I mean, it's bad. I'm not saying it's good, but so going to exception payroll time keeping, is that going to help IBEW, which is their normal day doesn't exist. They're all different.
Well, certainly you're not going to do it for everybody. I understand that, but we got to realize that as these defects start mounting and as the issues start mounting and climbing, every one of them require resources and time and effort to get them done. So if you can sit there and say, well, maybe I can reduce that and reduce those defects on a portion of my 3,000 employees, then presumably that means I can then get more resources focused in on where I need to in terms of solving those. I'm not suggesting it's the panacea, but it's certainly, in my mind, worth looking at if the group continues to struggle, and if you continue to have a payroll department, they're trying to, dig their way out. And at some point, that's when you have one person already leaving, how many more people are going to sit there and throw up their hands and say, I can't do this anymore, which is a horrible situation. So that's why I'm suggesting check it out, look at it, make a decision. If you've got that payroll specialist, it sounds like maybe we are using them. If not, get them here. There's no reason why you shouldn't get them here. And I'm talking about things that you do right away. Get those known differences published. Get them out there. Tell everybody about them. Make sure they understand. And tell them in such a fashion that they'll understand. You can't sit... I think I showed you those known differences a couple of months ago. Some of them are double speak. Okay? But you've got to sit there and say, this is the effect it's going to have on your check. You're not going to see this, or you will see this. That's the kind of language I think that needs to happen. Okay? Stop all design changes immediately. Immediately. There's that. So unless somebody can make a case for it, you got to change the design of the system. Don't do it. Don't look at them. You don't have the resources to go after them. So just put them off. Yeah, should you look at them 6 months from now? Sure. Not now. Enforce making the changes only with system changes. Whatever you do, continue to follow the process. Continue to follow the applications. Continue to make... It's the same concept that, if you're going to make a change to your financials, you don't go in there and change a number in a spreadsheet. You process a journal voucher. Same thing with time changes and so forth. So you got to make that continue. You got AMS hours. Again, I don't know what the number is today versus what it was 3 or 4 days ago. But if there's 1,000 hours available in AMS resources, that's a half a person year. Why wouldn't we use those resources? And are you ready for this? They're cheaper than SAP consultants. Okay? And they're cheaper than Peloton consultants. Sounds like a no-brainer to me. All right? Conduct remedial training of timekeepers, payroll, and so forth. I know of one individual who was manning the help desk. I know that person could not possibly answer a single question about SAP functionality. So we all know what that person was doing. That person was taking a message, right? Well, I think everybody is at the point where they need to have answers. Right? We don't have time to sit here. We've all gone through this. Call somebody in India and have the language issue, and then you try to explain the problem, and then finally you get so bothered you sit there and escalate. You want to escalate the thing up, right? You want to talk to somebody that will give you an answer. I think that's very possibly what's going on here. Now, payroll people are doing that, but there's only so many payroll people. Okay? But we do have functional expertise in terms of SAP consultants and AMS consultants. Functionally, they understand the system. They ought to be able to answer a lot of the questions. Maybe not all, but a lot. Establish roving ambassadors. Go out to people and talk to them. Go out to people and hold their hand. Now, do you have a lot of potential ambassadors on staff? No, there's a difficulty. That's a problem. Absolutely. But if you can, or if you can get SAP consultants or Peloton consultants, or get other project personnel, whatever the case may be, get them back in here and have them go roaming out there and answer questions. I call it hand-holding. Just walk up, hey, what are you doing? How can I help you? Boy, will that work. You go in out there and you help some of those timekeepers. Well, this is how you do that. That make sense? Okay. Establish focused hotlines. None of us like to hit 1 for this, hit 2 for this. None of us like to do that on voicemail, I mean, on phones, right? None of us like to do that. But by the same token, if you had a focused hotline, you'd be able to say, well, there's a person on this hotline that can answer timekeeping questions. Timekeeping questions. Person here that can answer pay questions, etc. I think that would help tremendously. And you don't have to go buy a fancy telephone system to do all that. You just have to publish a different phone number. All you got to do, have it go to a certain person's desk. Keep current with your updates. Hopefully everybody understands that one of the reasons that people started cratering is that Muni did not stay up to date with its patches and its updates with that software. Just didn't do it. For whatever reasons. Well, please, please, please don't go down that same path. Don't go down that same path. We're going to talk about this, but there are some security patches out there that my understanding is Muni's been informed. They haven't put it in. And boy, I sure don't want to be, Equifax, right? That's the name of that. I don't want to be Equifax because somebody broke in because I didn't put a security patch in, which is what happened at Equifax. Keep SAP consultants on site, whatever we have to do.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Zig, hold on.
If I could just comment on this last slide. Last night, the mayor asked Alden to do a kind of quick assessment of all of these issues, of why they're happening, what we can do to potentially identify additional payroll resources to help payroll, what additional training can be done, and other issues that could help shore this up. And Alden will be presenting that to the mayor and other people in the senior management team.
So is Alden back on track involved in this again?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, Tuesday night we had IBW went and talked to Robert Harris. Are all the pay problems resolved? That was Tuesday night. We're now on Thursday. Were the pay problems resolved?
As far as I
Robert
know,
Harris.
the ones that were brought up that night are, but I will have to verify that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Because we're in the legislative body, our only option is to stop or approve of any appropriations for SAP. And quite frankly, if this doesn't get solved, I may push the body to stop any appropriations for anything related to SAP until it is solved.
Understood.
That's the only power we have as a power of the purse.
This is the mayor's #1 priority at this point. Is the time
Okay, but my concern is when I get pay corrections, this amount have not been taken care of. These are real bodies. Go ahead, Zeg.
Okay. So, I'd like to just kind of bring this up, and this is related to the whole issue of resourcing. Really, we shouldn't be cutting off our nose to spite our faces, right? I mean, this whole expression is all about needlessly becoming self-destructive with regard to overreacting to things, okay? MOA is moving away from SAP much too fast. I can hear the reasons. Oh, we don't have to spend the money, they're too expensive, yeah. All those kinds of things. I understand that, but I think we're moving away from them and their knowledge too fast. I understand that that's a dollars and cents statement. And yes, I think the community, I realize that you have that particular hammer, but I think the community needs to spend more money on this. MOA is not taking advantage of its contracted resources. So, I mean, I just find that hard to understand. Okay, MOA is unprepared for the impacts of the changes. We're not looking at things from a point of view of what is the impact. Every time we have a change, every time we have a fix, we need to know what does it mean? What does it mean to that person who's got underpaid? We need to be doing that. Now, if we've got updates, and SAP has published this, and I'll show this to you, they're saying, hey, look, we got 51 or 53 servers out there that they consider to be in a critical mode because the security updates have not been put in. All we have to do is tell them to do it. Now, there's a process, I understand that. I understand there's a process, okay? But I sure wouldn't drag that out. Keep the selected knowledge consultants on site, augmented by AMS resources. There is nothing stopping us from saying, hey, I want that AMS resource and I want them to fly up here for 3 days. Nothing stopping us from doing that.
So you want to interrupt you for a minute, Suzanne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to your point about resources and maybe more money being needed to fix the defects. It's my understanding we have $3 million set aside in the operations budget for this transitional period.
No.
No, you do not?
Not 3 million for the transition period.
Okay.
I'll let Zig finish, and then we come back to some of these conversations because it's out the subject.
Okay, then I'm fine with holding that question to me.
When we get back to you, I want to know what security patches have been installed and which ones haven't been. Because that was a problem we had before with PeopleSoft. Go ahead, Zig.
Okay, let's go on. Just again, we're still talking the subject of what's going on. I have talked to you about policy updates for quite a while. And I've repeated this particular chart. I keep asking for updates. So all I can tell you is, as of the last time I had any information about this, none had been approved, therefore none had been published. Now, what's interesting here, we all need to be aware, you see that we've got 1 in payroll, we've got 11 in time collection, 1 in self-service, and 1 in manager self-service. Those policies are not out there, assuming that this is still correct. They're not out there. I have no idea if people are following the policy or not. Okay? So, Roosevelt basically reminds us, you know, smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. So we're going to have a bumpy road. We are going to have a bumpy road. But we can get there. We can get there. Let's talk about cost. I've tried, you know, every month I try to give you some numbers with regards to trending. That page ought to look familiar to you over on the right-hand side. I can't do that anymore. I have no information. I do not know. I have asked, but I do not know what's been spent on consultants per week in order to complete that trend chart. So my recommendation to you, excuse me, this one is on time, right? So my recommendation is simply request that you get that information on a weekly basis so that it can be, and you know, you can get somebody to do the trending so you can see where it's going. All right? Because if you request that, if the assembly requests that, you are then placing some accountability and responsibility on the people who are reporting it to you. Make sense? Next page. Same thing with the dollars. It's the same issue with the dollars. I was getting weekly spreadsheets that listed every consultant, hours, rate, estimated expenses. I was able to summarize all that up by contract so that I could get you those charts. I didn't get it this time. Haven't gotten it since September. I've asked. So my recommendation is that you ask. Okay? You know, I don't think this is going to change very much. I mean, you know, I did this at the end of September, so the only thing you've got in there is you've got some consultant charges and some internal charges that can't possibly be all that much for the last 3 weeks. Okay, that would go in here. So that's probably a pretty close number. But again, I've requested it. I have not gotten any project cost to date totals from the PeopleSoft system or from SAP. Okay? So I think the assembly should be expecting evidence that the administration is doing this, that they're staying on top of this stuff. So you ought to be seeing plan versus actual in terms of spending by contract, okay, or purchase orders if it's hardware and software. Plan versus actual in terms of cost allocations of ITD, where are they putting their time? Okay, and the same thing with internal MOA resources. Okay, so in terms of the shift to production, I notice I'm calling it the stabilization project. Yeah, we had some conversation about Synergy 2, but Synergy 2 is a downline project. Stabilization is going on right now. And I think you need to call it a project. I think you need to treat it as a project. And we'll talk more about what that means. So, I'd like to, would you pass these out? Just so that there's no confusion, I'm going to show you some pages from a document that was prepared by the Muni. And I've got some comments about that with those documents because it basically structures and shows what the Muni was going to do as of the end of September. Okay, so on 9/28 they came up with this document. All right, I have a copy of it. So the thing I think first of all we need to recognize, I don't see any changes over the last 3 weeks, other than we now have a single individual that's managing defects, which is good news. And it's very clear as to who the overall top dog is. Again, just reminding everybody, the best I can tell, there's only one individual with module expertise in ITD. And the knowledge transfer, I made this statement because I didn't think that they were getting any transfer to ITD. I have an update to that, and so I've added that update that the technical side is getting knowledge transfer. But there's no functional expertise there to transfer knowledge to. Okay? So let's go to the next page. So this is taken right out of their document. All I wanted to kind of highlight for you is this area of management and control is somewhat fuzzy as to who's responsible for what. Okay? Got to mention that there is a contractor in here at the management level. All right? By the way, this is the individual that's driving the defect management. And then I've got all of a sudden, because they're short of staff, all right? Because IT is short of staff, immediately I've got people doing two multiple jobs. So Nathan is in here twice. Catherine is in here twice. Okay. Then I get this down here, which is the Change Advisory Board, and it talks about technical representation, but very unclear as to who the members are. Okay, and then you'll notice over here, there's an application lead. That's the individual that knows something about, in this particular case, my understanding is FILO. He knows the financial piece, not necessarily the HR, HCM piece. But you notice this is blank. Okay, so the Change Advisory Board, pretty important kind of thing when you start talking about issues like, are you going to accept that change or not? Right? The question that I have is, are they really a deciding board or are they an advisory board? The title says advisory. I couldn't figure that one out. Couldn't figure out when they met. I have since then found out that they meet twice a day. That's an interesting sidebar. I've looked at the program change request log, okay, which had hundreds of changes from the project, but it stopped on 10/2. There's nothing on it since 10/2. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's a good thing if everybody buys into the fact that we're not going to have any changes in design. Good, great. Except that I've got anecdotal information that says PCRs are being tracked with defects. So now I'm going, okay, does that mean that the defect number is getting larger because I've got a bunch of design changes in there? I don't know. Next page. What does this chart say to you? I mean, would you call those amoebas or clouds? I had a real problem with this one. Okay, I mean, it talks about interaction and relationships and all that, but, you know, kind of everything is overlapped, and there's, you know, it's kind of like who's responsible for what. So if you, to me, it's just, I'm sitting there going, all I've got is a bunch of committees, and I'm not sure who's responsible or who's accountable. So let's take a look at the committees. I went through that thing. And okay, here's all the committees. There's a whole long list of them. That's a lot of committees. But you know what? So I've got all these committees, but the irony of all this is the one committee that we've had throughout the project, which is executive leadership. My understanding is that committee has been canceled as of this week, that committee meeting, which I think should continue. The others, I'm not sure what you do with all of them. Okay. So here's the operations leadership team. This is an example of one of the committees, one of the groups. Here's the membership. I looked at the agenda. They meet weekly for an hour. So the agenda indicated that there were 15 line items. And we've got 12 people in there. 15 line items. That's an average of 4 minutes a line item. The other thing I thought was interesting is there was literally nobody assigned to each line item. I didn't know who was talking. I didn't know who was supposed to report. I had no idea. Okay? Last agenda item, action items. So immediately my question is, okay, did somebody take notes? I don't know. There was nobody listed as being the note taker. Is there a document that comes out of this that says, Joe, you do this, Susie, you do this? Don't know. Oh, by the way, we need it Friday. We got to fix that paycheck. I don't, whatever the case may be. Okay, so that was, you know, committees are great, but when you've got that many, not sure it's very useful. Let's take a look at the schedule.
Zig, is it possible to wind this up in 5 minutes so I can go to IT, so I can go to semi members? Because we probably have to be out of here by 1:30. Normally double shift the room.
I can move quickly.
If
Give
you
me
would.
10.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
What? Check with the mayor's office. Let me know what we've got coming.
This is, and again, these are still documents from this operations framework document that I just passed out. This is the schedule of the committee meetings for the week. Now you'll notice that first of all, it's every day of the week. The other thing I found interesting is the change advisory board meets twice a day. And if you add all these things up, whether it's a 15-minute meeting, or a stand-up meeting, or if it's an hour meeting, the amount of hours being spent on doing committee work here could very easily be spent a little more productively fixing issues and solving issues. Okay, it just seems to me a little bit of overload here. So one of the things that this document talks about is we need open communications, or excuse me, over-communicate. I couldn't agree more, but I'm not sure I would over-communicate with committees. All right, I mean, some, yes. So these are the unintended consequences of having that many committee meetings. Okay? And the most important one is you start losing focus on accountability. Okay, let's go to the next one. It's an organization chart out of theirs. The only thing I'm trying to say here is I don't know where this stands. I know ITD put out an RFP back in May or June, and they had a list of SAP resources that they wanted to have. What I find interesting is that they're not reflected on here. Like, for instance, a workflow, SAP workflow resource is one of them. Well, they're not here. And yet, ITD was thinking about it in June. So, again, same person issue, multiple places. You know, got a lot of to be determined, but you got to watch out. That cutover leader is going to be gone. I don't know what you're going to do. The SAP executive is gone. So this organization chart definitely needs to have some updates. One of their pages was a issue intake workflow, and I took a look at this. I mean, first of all, that looks kind of complex. How do I capture an issue? Then I looked at this box and it said, oh, this is where the functional consultant and the subject matter expert determine whether or not the issue is a defect. So somewhere after all of this mess, I get this important step. What's concerning is functional consultants will not be on site after tomorrow. This becomes much harder to do. Okay? Then we got to defect management. This little box, the next page has 30 steps. Sounds like a lot to me. Okay, let's go to the next one. This came from SAP. This came from SAP. They have a monthly report. This is the one that says there are 51 systems that are critical due to high priority security patches not being implemented. And they're not going to implement them until their customer says do it. So I don't know which one I am. Okay, I'm going to go through this really fast, but I listed these for you last month. I said these are the potential shortfalls. Now the next 4 or 5 pages basically give you some detail that most of these are actually happening. Okay, they are happening, and things are not going splendidly. So let's go skip right through those, and you can read them. But all I did was just kind of add little line items in there to show you what's happening with regard to that particular shortfall. So let's go to page 45. I showed you this, which was an estimate of what the staffing would look like going forward. You know, time coming out here, and this is, we're talking about years here. This is 6 months. This is the next 6 months. You know, and everybody went down, dropped off on resources. They needed to get back up again, right? They needed to get back up again. That's one issue, because they haven't. And secondly, you've got this continuing support thing, which is sort of a flat line, standard number of hours of people and so forth. I don't think you're there either. I think you're about halfway. Okay? So the outlook. All right, so the project is done. You've spent your money. You got a few remaining open items, but boy, you got to recognize that project knowledge is just starting to really float away. Really float away. What's the name of the Philo guy who ran the team? Yeah, Jim Mullen. He's gone, right? A month ago. Jim Mullen knew the configuration of this system, right?
Philo.
Yeah, well, the Philo side, yeah. Okay, he's gone. Transition to production has been rocky. Been slow in acquiring internal resources. We've over-communicated to the point where we got too many committees, too many meetings, unfocused meetings, and confusion regarding accountability and responsibility. We've got to straighten that out. Okay? MOA has been slow in utilizing AMS resources. It's letting the number of defects outpace corrections, although we saw that yesterday was the first time it dipped down. That's a good thing. So, what do I think we ought to do? Establish a 6-month stabilization period as the project. It's got to be a project. Responsibility and accountability. Okay? I've been building up to this. I've been telling you about the committees and all those issues that I think are there, and the fact that we've got some confusion and clouds and amoebas and finger pointing. All that stuff gets solved, and you say, this is a project. I've got a project boss. I got structure. I've got people responsible for things, to-do assignments, and I don't have a lot of meetings. Okay? Staff the project with full-time personnel, which is a mix of those prior consultants, new consultants, ITD personnel, and MOA SME leaders. And I'm including, of course, AMS in the consultant number there. Continue with the executive steering committee. Doesn't go away, it stays. Okay? Stays. with the stabilizations project director or executive sponsor, whatever title you want to use there, and they probably should continue to meet on a weekly basis. It might slack off in the first quarter, but boy, not now. Not now. Stop all design changes for the next 6 months and accept the process changes that are previously agreed to in the design. Face the fact that everybody agreed to the blueprint. Everybody reviewed and agreed to the functional specs and the technical specs. They're starting to say, well, it's not the way we used to do it. They're starting to say that already. Are you kidding? You got to go with what you got. I mean, if there's truly a problem, sure. But I'm pretty sure that the technical specs and the functional specs don't say underpay people. I'm pretty sure it doesn't say that. I think you ought to keep Alden. I think you ought to be the project director of the stabilization project. You got a resource there that you really cannot afford to have go away. Okay, but it's got to be a project. It's got to be a project. Okay, I'm just going to repeat a couple of things here. I call it assuring completion. I won't go into the details. I still think you need to have, if you go to the next page, a cost audit. And this describes what needs to be there and what the objectives are. Next page, I still think you need to have a performance audit of the project. Okay, and that describes what those are. So some assembly actions that I would recommend for you. I'm almost done.
I know we've got people coming in at 1:30, so we're going to have to get out of here, I'm afraid.
Continue the weekly reports from the stabilization project director for the next 6 months. Okay? This is what ought to be there. This is what ought to be there. But I think by you doing that, you place the onus back on the administration and back on the project director to give you evidence that they are on top of the project. Next page. Continue monthly reports which focus on the cost reporting. Where are you spending your money? So you've got, and I say 9 months because you've got the stabilization project, but there's going to be something else. There's going to be Synergy 2 or whatever you want to call it. It's going to start somewhere, whether it's the second quarter or third quarter. Same thing needs to be happening. Okay. So closing thoughts. Preserve the momentum. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Preserve the momentum and realize that it's going to be 6 months. Keep your key people involved. Expect individual accountability instead of committees. Make it a project. Go ahead and use the contractor resources and realize it's going to cost you money. Prevent unwarranted system changes. Keep asking for accountability. And on that note, I will say goodbye.
Thank you, Zeg.
Don't
Questions
change
from
your
some of
phone
your
number.
members? It's the last time we're going to see Zeg.
Don't change your phone number.
Here's my card.
Zeg, you've done a great job for us. We appreciate it.
My
You're the only
pleasure.
one that
It
was
has been a
accurate
pleasure.
on the closing dollar amount.
Just one quick question.
Pete?
Thank you, and thank you, Zig.
Valuable resource for us.
Thank you.
Retraining, it seems like we maybe need to go back from some remedial training. Do we have anybody left that has got that ability?
Good question. You have, as I understand it, there is one individual who is dedicated in the HR department and is responsible for this entire process. The problem, of course, is that person doesn't know everything. That person is leading, guiding, managing, organizing, whatever you want to call it. The only resources you really have are the ones who were trained earlier and did some of the training, as well as the contracted resources. So those people would need to be pulled in. It's one of the reasons why I was suggesting that maybe a very effective way to do all this is to literally establish some Q&A sessions. I mean, then you can sit there and say, okay, now we're going to have a Q&A session about this topic. You control the topic. You say it's about reporting time in union situations with telestaff or whatever you want to call it. Say, we'll be there, you come in, we'll answer your questions. Okay, and it's got to be a person who can answer them.
Rose just informed me we've got the room. They moved that other meeting to somewhere else.
Oh, good.
So we've got time.
Thank you.
Question from Assembly members. I want to ask the union shop steward, Is your payroll corrected as of Tuesday night? Were the problems you brought up with Robert Harris dealt with Tuesday night? Or Wednesday?
They've had some checks, but they were stolen.
I
Tim?
guess just as an observation, I'm afraid everybody's dispersing to the four winds, and we're not there. I think we still need to do some organization thought and have a plan for how we're going to get out of this mix, and then staff it and fund it accordingly.
Well, since Robert Harris isn't here, we can talk to the city manager who is here. Thank you, Bill.
What are you going to do about it, Bill?
First thing, I think you should invite IT to present their.
Invite, IT's always been invited. Come up to the table and tell us what you're doing.
So first, thank you, Zig, for sharing that perspective. You have to recognize that it's a perspective. With your permission, I'd like to just introduce myself to you guys professionally. I'm an engineer by training. I'm a Asian graduate dropout. I didn't get my PhD. I spent my professional career in IT with probably the premier consulting organization on the planet, which is Anderson Consulting and Accenture. I started on the ground floor, and I ended as a technology partner. I understand everything that we go through here. I've done it for Fortune 100 and Fortune 50 clients, and I've done it for small clients. What I'm trying to tell you is, I understand where this organization is, I understand where it's trying to go, I understand its challenges, I understand technology and how to get there. And then you might ask, well, what's the hell is this guy doing that bills out at $400 an hour doing a $50 an hour job here? I'm a first-generation immigrant. I chose this country. 17 years ago, when I got my citizenship, I walked into the reserves to serve, and I was too old. 2 years ago, the good Lord directed me to the Muni and gave me this opportunity. This is my opportunity to serve, and I look at this as my tour of duty. I'm not going to retire from the Muni. And depending on what decisions we make, I don't know how long I last, and I might say something that might get me fired tomorrow anyway. But the point is, I'm here because I'm choosing to serve. I've got skills and talents that you technically cannot afford, but I'm choosing to serve over here. So yes, you've heard a lot of things that frankly make us all look totally incompetent back there. But it's a perspective. It's a perspective with a certain amount of data. It's a perspective with interpretation of data. It's a perspective with lack of data. But it's a perspective. There's lots of good things that were said today. I made a ton of notes back there. My intention is not to refute a lot of this conversation. I can't. I can go through this, and we can have a whole another hour, and we can go through this exact presentation, and I can look at every single slide and give you another perspective. Absolutely, I'd love to do it. But the point is this. First of all, don't think we're a whole bunch of idiots back there. That's an insult. And that is the way part of this conversation went. The important thing to recognize is, and I'll definitely talk about the heck conversation because that was important to you. And then also let's talk about this whole conversation about AMS and having 1,000 hours a month to spend on it. One of the things that is not at all mentioned here, not one time, was there a mention of the actual dollars that the Muni has allocated for this time frame. For October, November, December, January, February, March, those 6 months that Zig very rightly said would be high resource cost months. I might get fired for what I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Right now, the Muni has funded 2 resources for SAP support. 2. The rest of them that you see out there, 4, 5, 6, those are general government resources that have been working on SAP that are not supporting the 35 other departments because they're supporting and trying to keep the ship afloat. So yes, we are underfunded. Yes, we're under-supported. But that's just the fact that that's where we are. You approved $1.6 million for post-go live support. That $1.6 million bought us 6 weeks, October through middle of November. People are rolling off. Why? Because we don't have the funding to keep them going. We're not incompetent. There's knowledge transfer happening. Yes, we are using AMS resources. AMS was funded at about $400,000 since April. Their project manager cost us $45,000 a month. Technically, $45,000 times 10 months is $450,000 just in their project manager. Yes, we have been using them. We've got 8 resources working offshore helping us out. Yes, we're bringing them up to speed slowly. What is lost in this whole conversation, completely lost. I'd been fired long before this project went live when I did projects like this. If I told my client I'm going live without doing user acceptance testing, without doing performance testing, I'm cutting scope. I'm putting scope in the change requests that will be done after go live. If any of you are surprised right now that we've got all these issues, you should not be. We chose and we made a business decision to go live because we had lots of criteria. We went live. That's huge after 7 years of pain. But we all need to recognize that there is pain. It should be no surprise to any of us. We did not test the system like we are doing right now. Yes, the answer was given. Oh, it was all designed. It was all signed off on. Yes. How much effort does the municipality spend in educating its folks, teaching them to be planners, teaching them to be designers? They're all doing their jobs. And then you take them away from their daily job and say, okay, tell us how the system works. They did the best they can to build a design. It was built to the design, fair. Now they're learning all the little gaps, all the little things that they could not possibly have known, because we are not an integrated shop right now. Even in the same department, if 10 people are working, it's not that all 10 of them know exactly what each other is doing. So how are you going to have a system that you build across the municipality and expect all these little individuals in silos to be building a comprehensive system? Now is the first time your people are having a chance to see a system and react to it. And that's what's happening. Yes, we need support. Yes, we need to figure out this funding. We're not stupid. We let people know, the administration, months ago, that we need funding. We know we need another $1 million for this year to keep us at least through December. We know we need partner with the same staff that we chose, not we. The municipality has got excellent people. I did not want to hear that mentioned on this conversation, except for the fact that they might have worked 80 hours of overtime. A lot of them have defined who the consultants are that they value. That's who we kept in October, and we're trying to keep as many of them as we can in November, but the money's going to run out November 15th or so right now, because they're doing overtime. We have been focused on fixing this system. Yes, you can raise your hand and say, what about these patches? And I'll talk about the patches. But there have been so many things that we have to fix in these last few weeks, that's been the focus. So it's very easy to say, oh, this is all the stuff that's not working. You know something somebody should have been fired on? You went live. How much focus was there on transition before go live? You know what actually happened? They refused to give us certain levels of access. Since the day I got here 22 months ago, I was told to my face, we're going to go and make SAP go live without IT support. They couldn't do it. It's not possible. They had to have our support. We were kept out of the yellow building. We were kept out of conversations. People were told not to talk to IT. Transition did not happen until after we were given the car keys. And now we're trying to keep a system going live, we're trying to fix defects, and now somehow we're supposed to learn from people. SAP AMS resources, 2 SAP organizations, consulting services and AMS services, internally. We're trying to coordinate transition, knowledge transfer, talk to the consultants long before go live. And there's amazing resistance to that. So yes, transition has sucked. As a professional, I'd give this an F. I'd give it an A to the staff for getting us to go live. That is fantastic. Now, I might get fired for everything I'm telling you. Fine, big deal. So the point is simply this. Yes, we do need help. We do need staff to get there. Here's something else that's completely lost in this complete conversation about ITD does not have functional consultants. I'll put names out here so there's no surprise. Marilyn Bonsoff, in a conversation with the mayor, said SAP told her that they could run this environment with just 2 resources. The IT would need to dedicate 2 resources to run SAP. That's what they funded. I've got, and I can, if you ask for it, I'll share it with you. I talked to 20 different public sector entities. I made phone calls. I interviewed all their CFOs, CEOs, everybody involved with SAP that went live. I've got all their comments on what to expect. This is no surprise. But there have been challenges in transition. Yes. If you say, okay, we've built up this beautiful system, here's the keys, go run with it, guys. Yeah, that's where we are now. We're running with it. We're keeping the ship afloat. Yes, you got this big list of backlog, I get it. But we are learning too. It's very easy to say, oh, pay those guys $309 an hour and come and fix our problem. BS. A lot of these issues are not because SAP has done a very good job for us from a professional services perspective. At all. But we got there. The point is we got live. That is huge. One bit of advice, please celebrate in the Muni. I'm still waiting for that celebration or some announcement or some acknowledgement for all those people that have spent 80 to 100 plus overtime hours to get us here. So please recognize, it's very easy to take shots at someone. It's very easy to transition a product that is not ready and then say, oh, by the way, you guys should do all this. Now I'm going to share something with you to put things in perspective a little bit. Please look at page 1. If you're tracking me on page 1, what you're going to see is, look at the middle table. Page 1. Yes. It tells you when the patches were released, when SAP wants them due, patched by. Okay? That's the recommendation they've given us. You'll notice 2 of them were before we went live, and they were deferred. The project team did not want to have certain levels of changes, and this was one that was considered okay. We don't want downtimes because they might require downtimes. It was deferred. A whole bunch were released 10/10 and one on 9/11. Great. Their due dates are what? November 7th, March 11th, etc. This is SAP's recommendations. We have looked into prioritizing them. We know what systems they go on. We are focusing on development environment and prod environments, those 2. That's the table on the right-hand side, top. Yes, we have started the process of patching and making those requests. Another small segue, we have got a disastrous set of contracts with SAP. We were forced to sign them because they held us hostage. The project wouldn't make the States if we didn't sign those contracts. What that means here is it takes a lot of effort for us just to get this stuff going. It is not as you might expect. Pick up the phone and call them. They'll do it for you. I really wish it was that simple, and for the price we're paying, it should have been that simple. It is not. We've been focused on break fix, and we're working patches into it. You want to ding us for not having done it the day we went live? Fair enough, ding us. But that is not practical. Let's go to page 2, please. Zig is right. Right now, we're drinking through the fire hose, calls are coming in, and yes, we're right now labeling them as a defect. It's not accurate. This count is a combination of defects and enhancements. We know that, we're parsing it. But we're not working on enhancements. If we are, it's something that slips through the crack. It's not the intention. But what is accurate? The municipality people are telling us their functional expectations are not met. That is accurate. They're calling and telling us this is not the way we want it. Whether they're right or wrong is a different story. So this is a valuable metric. These numbers will change, sure, when we decide what is an enhancement and we don't do it and what is a defect and we do it. True. We talk about AMS. Why are you not using AMS? That's a no-brainer. Yes, we're a total bunch of idiots. We're not using AMS when we got 1,000 hours sitting there. Those 1,000 hours cost money. That if we don't have, we can just turn on the spigot. So yes, we're using them. We're using them to build defects. We're using them to learn our systems as they go through this defect process. Sure, we could fly them all over from all over the world. That also costs money. So, we are not stupid. We are using our resources as best we can. The point is also simply, we've got 30 named resources here. We can use them. We are. I also put on here because I believe in transparency. And that's why I invited the rest of my SAP team here. You've got their names, you've got their phone numbers. I'd like each of them just to stand up as I call them out. Melissa Bouquet. She is our leader running our operations environment. She's an experienced executive, has done project management. I'll at some point in time let you visit with her and get some more information. There's this big misnomer that ITD should have a whole bunch of functional resources. But they've not been funded, and that wasn't the operating model. The model was you're going to have 2 people in the municipality, and everything else is going to be sourced from SAP, AMS, or HEC. Yes, I told everybody that would listen. We need 12 people, we need 13 people to run SAP. A year and a half ago, I told them we probably need 15 people in functional areas that either transition and make this their full-time job, or the functional area owns a subject matter expert in that functional area. We are where we are. We're doing the best we can. So yes, I did find one guy that is an SAP expert. Been doing it for 20 years, going to projects and doing what we are paying $309 an hour for. Pete, where are you at? Pete chose to join us. He chose to join us because he lives in Alaska. He wants to work for us in Alaska. If you don't like something, you catch a plane tomorrow and be gone and help somebody else. Nathan Pankot, he's our technical officer. Where's Nathan? He's been painfully dealing with SAP for 7 years. He's our technical expert. We have him in-house. We alienated him, told him don't be a part of our solution until the last 3 months. But he's here. He's a loyal employee and a knowledgeable employee. Scott Hooper. Scott's been here for also 5-6 years since SAP started. He's been dealing with all the ticketing issues that the project team created. He is right now doing yeoman's job with SAP security. Yes, we have a system that's not perfect. Yes, we designed it to have excruciating detail in terms of security. Well, excruciating detail in terms of roles and responsibility and security means every time it's wrong, there's an excruciating amount of detail to kind of fix it. And yes, that's where we are. So he is helping us with all the roles and responsibilities, etc., that we have injected into the system to make it complex. Okay, that was a design decision. We built it that way. Eric Wicker, database. Eric has to take time off from the Muni because he's so fed up with working with SAP HEC and SAP AMS. He has to disappear, and I let him disappear rather than losing him. He's our technical expert that's dealing with the database and all the other issues that we have to deal with. Yes, patching is in his domain, and he's working on it. Catherine. Catherine is a resident subject matter expert with respect to data. The project team uses her, used her. We use her. She is teaching the project team members. It's an affront to think, oh, the data lead's leaving, so my God, we're in trouble. Yes, we will hurt when people leave, I get it. But they all came on board with zero knowledge of the municipality, and they picked it up. When we get somebody else, they come on board with zero knowledge, and they will pick it up. And they'll be a whole lot cheaper and possibly a whole lot better than what we have right now. Yes, the Muni is risk averse. We like to work with people that we're familiar with. But she has done a yeoman's job with our data and in PeopleSoft and now in SAP. And the last gentleman is Doug Miller. Yes, he's a contractor, but he's been fantastic. And yes, he's going to help us with the defects and getting all that on board. Yes, we've got gaps. Yes, we've got skills and people that we would like to staff and fill roles with. But we're IT. We get cremated on the budget. 2018, we're going to get cremated again. Yes, you're thinking, wow, I just gave you $3 million. Yeah, we need to go look at what those $3 million will actually buy us. What it's actually doing is funding for a complete year that which was funded halfway this year. AMS was only funded for 3 months this year. Next year, if you want to fund it for a year, which you need to, there's an incremental ask. That is what part of the $3 million was. HEC was only funded for 10 months, and next year they're funded for 12 months. There's an incremental ask. Other things are capital and whatever, which I'm not going to talk about. But the point is that $3 million is going to be used, yes. But I'm losing positions in IT. We need more positions or more resources as Zig rightfully identified. So yeah, we're keeping the ship afloat. And we will. We're turning the corner already. We've got a long ways to improve, sure. But that's how this organization learns. This organization learns through experience. I can tell you all, you will need $5 million next year. And you will laugh at me today. It's when you feel the pain that you'll act. And I don't mean you personally, I mean as an organization. That's been my experience over the last 22 months. So yes, we are where we are because this is pain that we had to feel to make certain decisions that we have to make. Now I'll be happy to take any questions for whatever time we have left.
Question, we've got lots of time.
Okay.
Question from assembly members. Pete?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we've got 7 individuals here that you spoke about. So you think we need at least 7 additional?
No, sir. No. This team can help us identify what we need additionally. I have reference points from other organizations that are in a similar situation and what they use from a technical perspective to support an environment like this. If we have a very good provider, which is what we should be looking for, we will not need a whole bunch of bodies in-house. Plus, recognize this is Alaska. We do not have SAP skilled resources looking for jobs out here. So yes, we do need skilled resources. I would love to be able to grow some resources within the community and give them an opportunity to grow because there's certain skills that they can learn. I need the funding for it, but yes, but it's not 7. It may be some other number based on what contractor resources we're able to get versus what we feel. We decided that we needed our own security, so security skills are being developed in-house. Role security and so on and so forth.
I just wanted to let you know that I've been asking all along if we had enough personnel in our IT department to do this. So if we don't, it isn't because I haven't been concerned about that.
Sir, I cannot explain what happens in this institution.
It's not.
He left and tried to run for mayor. the last IT person. John?
It's pretty clear that you feel like you've been bullied. And I say from the sit here, we know what we know and kind of largely what we're told. But I think Alden and even Zig have been really saying how hard everyone is working. And we can see when we go downstairs and look in that room. So we're very aware of the huge hours. In fact, I have a neighbor who lets me know that he's working very hard. And we do appreciate that. I mean, it's not unknown to us. The separation between IT and SAP people has been very vague to me. I didn't know there were blocks between them and that's a problem. So that's new. But we all know you're working really hard. And also as far as funding, we, to some extent, have requests. We need X number of dollars to get this through. And we pretty much agreed to everything. We never said, no, we're going to knock some out. We just want to know, is this the real number? And it sounds to me like we weren't given possibly a real number, but we've approved everything. We said, we got to get this done. We've got to make it work. And, that's our solid position. So, and then looking at it, kind of just, how is this working? I've asked, it's only been 2 people, but in here, are you using SAP? I went to visit HR, and she goes, yeah, how's that working? Really good. It's very positive. So 2 for 2. And when I look at the payroll, now, we got to fix that, and that is a crisis for these people. But thousands were paid well. So, I mean, I don't look at it and say, this was an absolute horrible disaster. We've got some focused issues in a very tricky payroll situation, and what I see is a very solid good faith effort to correct it. I think we have problems, and SIG is here to tell us the problems. So it looks negative, but we can actually see in the backdrop, a lot of it's very, very good. This is huge, complex, and I'd say for the most part, it seems to have gone very well. We're in a process to fix some bad things, and we're doing that. So I don't think from here, from my view, you should feel like we think you're idiots or anything. We're very appreciative, and we see a lot of good, too. So anyway, so thank you. Thank you.
Eric?
What Pete and John said both, but I mean, we've been asking that question for months. Years, but let's say months. And Zig has been pointing out that deficit. We don't do the programming, right? We provide the funding. We provide oversight with some help and funding when asked, or we decide that we're not going to do funding. That's what we do. So, I mean, I can't tell sitting here whether you're saying we have enough resources, give us time, or we do not. Which is it?
We do not right now.
Okay, what does it need? I'm still got the floor. What does it need to do it right?
I will get back to you with what it is, what the situation is today.
Okay, I can't believe we don't have that answer now. We've been asking, as we said, for a long time. But why not now where you can look at me and say, here's what we need? How come we can't answer that question?
We cannot answer that question that precisely because we are right now in the process of fixing a system. We are in crisis mode right now. What I need right now is, yes, hours of labor to fix this crisis. What do we need a little bit longer term is dependent on what the system actually does, what contract resources we're able to get, what we're not able to fill contractually, and we believe we should fill internally. So it is not a simple question of just give me 17 bodies. Because then you challenge me and say, okay, prove that these are the exact 17 that you need. So the answer is yes, there is an answer. I definitely can get you an answer in terms of man hours that we would like to have to knock these defects off, because we've got that. I can get you that. I would like. I can get you that.
Anything else, Eric? Tim?
I'm just frustrated, and I know you are too, and I know everybody is. Zig is, and Alden is, and everybody else. This has been one painful process from the start. And it was my impression at the beginning we still needed to go down and purchase some green eye shades and pads and pencils. It's been a nightmare from the beginning, and part of it is our location, the resources available in the state, the fact that we've had a couple of different administrations, a couple of different things go on. Everybody has an opinion as to what's wrong and how to fix it and what's needed to fix it. And so far, it hasn't proven correct. I think we've made progress, sure, but we're not there, and I know we're not there, and I'm damn frustrated that we're not there after all the money, time, effort, and people that we have gone through in this process. So I too am frustrated.
But we have made progress.
Well, but whose opinion do we listen to? Do we listen to your opinion? Do we listen to Zig's? Do we talk to Alden? Do we listen to the mayor and what what his support staff's telling them? Somehow, somewhere, we got to have some accountability, and the damn thing's got to work. So, I too am frustrated.
Other questions, assembly members? Any?
Looks like Suzanne might have something now.
Suzanne, go ahead. I'm going to do the last, so that's the reason I'm going to you guys.
Thank you for being here, and to the rest of the team. I'm still processing some of this information. Being a new member, I mean, my experience so far too has been that you've talked about some of the risks of going live too soon, and definitely the pressure to move into an operational phase. I'm a little bit concerned because I thought that more money had been budgeted for the transition. But I can understand if that number is one that evolves. At this point, given that we're 82 million.
82.2 million.
2 million in, we need to know that number and what it's going to take, because whether we call it Synergy 2, and I don't know if you support that approach, this is costing a crazy amount of money. So I'm very interested in knowing what that final number is and where we will be.
The best that I could possibly do is share with you what other organizations have gone through. I cannot predict the future, but I can share with you what other institutions have gone through and the kind of dollars that they've had to invest.
And I work for an organization that uses SAP systems for payroll. We mostly do exception-based reporting, but we have other groups where they have to go, and other financial models as well. And we had a smooth transition, but we don't have the enterprises. We don't have many of the other factors, and recognize that we had a model that was specifically tailored to the municipality, and that there's not some kind of like base starting point. All that has to be created. So yes, the final number would be very helpful.
Felix?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think most of my colleagues have hit on some of the frustrations we've heard, where we're going short-term, long-term, mix-ups in communication. But we've talked in previous meetings, both with Zico and in our budget, when we talk about SAP, about morale. And based on what you have said, it seems like we've been failing in that area of morale. So since your team is here, this is something that I do at my other work, which is sort of a social work job. Could the team, it's sort of elementary, but could you guys do sort of a thumbs up, middle, down, where you guys are? I'd love to get that elementary sense of where you guys are since you're here.
Where you want to be?
Yeah.
What's the end point?
Oh boy, I didn't know this would be so complicated. Let's just do today.
Too many variables.
Yeah. Your mental state, yes. Morale. That's what I want to get at, is morale. Yeah. Morale's down. Okay. Good to know. Yep. Thank you.
Mine is too.
So, just a few comments. When we started this monster years ago,
5 years.
we had a different mayor who brought it to us at $9.6 million, no problem. Had his administration ever done one simple thing, like called other cities and found out their experience, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now. The choice was made not to take SAP, but to go differently. And that was overridden by Lucinda Mahoney, who was CFO at that time. She wanted SAP, so that's how we ended up with it. I talked to people down at San Diego. I talked to people in Portland. Big cities have had a real problem with SAP going live. There is no easy answer to this thing. Right now we're in the budget cycle, and I'm looking at how much more money you guys want than we gave you last year. And that may be a factor of what you do and may have to give it to you. But we do need to know the dollar amount because we're responsible for our constituents. And when they know this thing started at 9.6 million and now it's up to 82.2 million, they're going to ask us, what have you guys been doing, playing Juno or what? That concerns me. And I know we're dumping on you guys, but my main concern right now is this stuff. When I've got employees not being paid, I need your help. You're an IT professional. We've got payroll that are professionals. We need to figure out why these workers are not getting paid. I've invited them to come to every assembly meeting, and until you guys are tired of hearing them. And I want to know when this problem is solved. Because it's unacceptable for us to have people put their lives on the line as they do, going up poles, dealing with electricity, and they're worried about their checks coming in.
Amen.
So, that's all I've got. Yes, Tim?
Just one more comment. We knew at the beginning that we were going to have trouble when we got to this phase. We've got these enterprise activities that have all different work rules and all different ways of doing business. And the decision was made early on, well, let's roll them into it. And they were saying, well, are you sure we maybe should be operating independently or the way we were doing it before, because nothing's the same between those enterprise activities. And I'm beginning to think that that's not only part of the problem, but maybe it's keeping us from finding a good solution. So I don't know. There's still a bunch of decisions that have to be made, but I'm concerned, Mr. Chairman, that I'm not going to be around when this thing goes live, when it really works.
Well, you and I have 2 years left on the body.
Well,
I'm not sure either wants to be around.
maybe.
You know. Rose, what'd you say? Carissa, what?
Krista will wrap up the meeting.
Thanks,
Okay.
Rose.
But thank you.
Thank you. If I get fired tomorrow.
What did Hershey's finally settle on to get SAP working for them?
What's that?
What did Hershey's Corporation finally settle on to get SAP working for them? Do you know?
I didn't talk to Hershey. I talked to a public.
$100 million for the last time they looked at it.
Yes.
And the thing is, somebody could write a doctoral thesis on the failure of SAP in this town. So if you're looking for a doctoral thesis,
Yeah, but it
this would
wouldn't
be a good
right.
one. Thank you. This meeting's over.